Well, hey there, everybody. We are here to talk about this week's sponsor. Lanson, let me ask you something.
Yes.
Are you ready to show off some spooky pride for Halloween?
Absolutely. I am so stoked, guys. Usually the whole month of September leading into October is spooky time for me, getting ready for Halloween, so it's going to be good.
Oh, for sure. And if you, need to take your look to the next level, there's nothing better than getting some handmade stuff from a local, somebody from the Utah area, if you're Utah-based, I should say.
Right.
But we are actually sponsored this week by Sierra Bewitchin' Designs on Etsy, who makes the finest spooky-themed earrings. And I know Lanson is a big earrings guy. He's constantly wearing them. And these are actually made by hand. There's skeletons, there's pumpkins. They are so much fun. And I know that Lanson is all about, that spooky fall style.
Heck yeah, man. Got my pumpkin sweater and then my ghost earrings. I'm good to go.
Yeah, it's ghost earrings, but he wears a pumpkin on his head. It's full jack-o'-lantern.
I make sure to cut some lines so you can still see the bling. So it's over my ears that I cut the pumpkin.
Make sure there's a clear line in the sand for you.
Right.
Well, I know what you're thinking, right? Do fans of the show get a special deal on these earrings?
Do they?
Yeah, they do.
Oh,
man.
heck yeah.
You can use code FINALBOY at checkout for 20% off of all earrings in the store. And there's so many different selections, you guys. It's really fantastic. You're supporting a independent creator who is making these things by hand, and you're going to look fresh to death for Halloween. And if there's an appropriate time of year to look fresh to death, it's Halloween.
Most definitely.
So be sure to head on over to etsy.com/shop/Sierra Bewitchin' and use code FINALBOY at checkout.
Heck yes.
Final Boy Status is a podcast about scary movies and the stuff that happens in them. The entire horror genre is generally frightening and disturbing, so if you're a kid, be sure to ask your parents if it's okay for you to listen. Or don't. You'd probably be cooler if you didn't ask for their permission. But then again, I won't tell you how to live your life. Also, we will be discussing spoilers during this podcast, so don't say we didn't warn you.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of Final Boy Status.
Still going.
Your favorite horror movie podcast. I'm here, as always, with Lanson Lappin.
Hello.
And Luke Haueter.
That's me.
Yeah, that is you. That's true. I know that. That's a fact I know.
Nobody's more acutely aware of it than I am.
If this is your first time tuning in to this podcast, we are a horror movie podcast, as I said before, where we watch a horror movie, we talk about it, but most importantly, we watch a horror movie to see if we could survive it better than the people in the horror movie. As the three most average Joes this world has ever seen.
The most average of Joes.
It comes from a very good place that you can trust as far as the reality of some of these horror movies, and if just an average person could survive them. None of us has any formal kung fu training, I'm pretty sure.
I think Lanson did. I'm pretty sure there's a martial arts that's specifically for women. I'm pretty sure you studied that for a bit.
Yes. It's called boxing.
Took you that long to come up with that?
I had to remember. I've been hit in the head a couple times, dude, doing boxing.
All of these buff
his
women.
Body.
He's getting punched in the head by all these buff women.
Dude.
I gotta get into boxing.
Yeah, man. My chin is not what it once was.
I'm not saying something. That's a good chin. Wonder what it was
No,
before.
it's really a glass jaw at this point. You could, breathe on me funny, and I'd be like, oh, geez, what's going on?
I've seen it happen.
I'm losing
It's
consciousness.
crazy. I've seen it happen.
So our episode today is about the movie Await Further Instructions. It's a movie I'd never heard of until Luke brought it up.
Yeah.
He can give more to the story, but he literally told me I was perusing Netflix. He saw it. He watched it. And so other than that, I mean, I don't have much more background for it. Other than that, he saw it on Netflix and we watched it. So we're doing an episode on it, though.
Yeah.
So go watch it so you can follow along, or if you want to wait to hear our thoughts. But again, there will be some spoilers as we're talking, so be wary of that.
As always.
And I think this movie kind of, more than a lot of movies we do, if you're interested in watching it, just watch it and then come to us, because I think spoilers, even though I think if you knew more about this movie than I did, it'd still be a fulfilling experience, but I think the less you know definitely would be the better experience in the end, if you guys agree with me.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I feel like all three of us had the same kind of experience with this movie, which is we went in completely blind. Yeah?
Yep.
I mean, I had seen it before we watched it together, but again, like Adam nailed it directly on the head. I was having trouble sleeping one night. I was scrolling through Netflix. And this movie is one of those movies that you see on Netflix all the time. It's basically been on Netflix ever since it came out. The movie, I mean, not Netflix.
Remember when Netflix came out?
It's been on there since Netflix came out. No,
That's so sweet.
This, like, it's just, you scroll through the horror movies on Netflix and you're just looking through, and there's a million movies that you see over and over again but you never watch. And I just remember scrolling past this movie, Await Further Instructions, over and over and over again, like on late nights when I couldn't sleep. And finally one night I was like, you know what, like, I don't know anything about this movie, it's always there, let's start it. If it's bad, I'll turn it off. Let's just see what happens. I ended up quite liking it. I mean, it's not the best horror movie I've ever seen, but I thought it was really, like, a fun movie to watch at like 2 a.m. without knowing anything about it. So yeah, I said maybe we should do it for the podcast. You gentlemen both said yes, and then watched it without knowing anything about it, I believe.
Not knowing a thing.
Yeah, and to put this movie, maybe I'll kind of throw this ball to one of you guys again. We've already kind of explained that this is going to be very spoilery, so, you know, after this point, we are not going to shy away from it. But one of you guys, what would you say is the premise of this? What I like to say, the back of the Blu-ray, premise to what's going on in this movie. What? One of you guys want to tackle that?
Do you want to take a stab at that, Lance? And I'm curious. I feel like you might be able to do it better than I could.
Well, we'll see. Take a crack at the title and see what happens.
This is a horror movie podcast, so let's take a stab.
Let's just cut right into it.
Nice.
Yeah, so basically, just to give like a nuts and bolts sort of a premise description of this, is you have Nick, who's visiting his family for the holidays for Christmas and bringing his girlfriend. He doesn't have the closest of relationships with all members of his family, so there's some tension there. And then, there's tension there, and then they wake up, and for some reason, some unknown cause has caused them to be basically trapped in their house. All windows, all doorways, everything, is just mysteriously been barricaded. And all that they have to go on is their TV set just basically says await further instructions. So just kind of this element of isolation and fear and, feelings and things that had not been talked about and had been festering, coming to the top and boiling over. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of it's a wild ride, but it's a good time.
It's a weird one for sure.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I guess getting into the movie like a little bit, when we say like they're trapped in the house, we mean like this entire movie takes place within this house.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we called out at the beginning, there's a few like drone shots to give some production value. This is obviously a movie that didn't have a huge budget, but they really get good use out of the budget they did have.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, this entire movie takes place inside of one house, and it's got a really good element of claustrophobia to it, which is something I kind of like in horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
Personally. But, yeah. So I guess, not that I'm looking at my phone for this information, but also I'm looking at my phone for this information. So just real quick, general background. This was directed by Johnny Kevorkian, not the Kevorkian, but a Kevorkian.
A Kevorkian, another Kevorkian, the other Kevorkian.
And this was written by Gavin Williams. Not a super well-known cast. Most of them are pretty...
Russian. Ivan Ristoforovich Kevorkian was a prominent Soviet Armenian surgeon and scientist who published 10 monographs in more than 230 scientific...
It's not slowing down. I don't know how to stop that. Just turn it off, I guess. I don't know.
What does that say on your screen? Await further instructions. Listen to
no.
the
Oh,
cover.
no.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, the windows, no.
To the window.
Yeah, not a super well-known cast. I would say the most recognizable person here is David Bradley, who plays the grandpa. He's from Harry Potter. He played...
Filch?
Filch? Is that the
Yep.
character's name?
Filch.
I almost said Filth. But
He's pretty dirty in here.
yeah, he's something.
Yeah.
So yeah, David Bradley is the grandpa, but basically I think the two prominent people to point out are Sam Gittins playing Nick, and Grant Masters plays Tony, Nick's father. Those are probably like the two most prominent players we're going to talk about a lot, so we'll call out those actors.
Yeah.
This is a British film, came out in 2018. I don't know when it ended up on Netflix, but I saw this in 2019, pre-pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Which I brought up during the movie. I saw this before a worldwide pandemic happened, and then watching it during a worldwide pandemic was a drastically different experience to the
Yeah.
first time watching it, for sure. But yeah, like, this is a real interesting one. It's very, very psychological, very much about, like, the choices the characters make. I think one of the most brilliant scenes in the movie is there's the scene where the dad is about to torture Nick, like with a screwdriver, and Nick's just yelling at him, "Don't you understand? We've done this to ourselves."
Yeah.
And it just like snaps the whole movie into focus that like every bad thing that's happened is something they did to themselves.
Right.
Like there is no, the dad is certain there's some outside force like acting upon them, but the truth is it's just them colliding together causing bad things to happen. And it's like really psychological in that way for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But I mean, yeah, probably just jump into like thoughts on the movie, right? Because we're kind of already there.
Right.
Yeah. So before we get into the
Sorry.
survivability of the movie, we definitely like to talk about two different factors: the quality of the movie. So just our thoughts out of 13, because it is a horror movie podcast. So quality out of 13, Luke is dying, and spoopiness out of 13. So let's start with Lanson. Lanson, in terms of quality and in terms of spoopiness, where does this movie lie?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as far as overall quality, even though you can tell it didn't have a huge budget, it's still pretty well executed, and I think it's a pretty, lean, mean, fighting machine of a movie. So, in my opinion, I would give it an 8 out of 13 for quality. And then for spoopiness, there isn't a lot of jump scares or anything like that, but certainly there's a lot of disturbing factors brought into it and things brought up, and like just kind of the whole like what would I do in that situation being
Not to like call you out, but the entire final act of this movie, every time I looked over at you, you're going like this.
oh,
Just
what the what?
just a pure expression of like, oh.
nasty. So certainly there are some, it gets pretty gnarly there pretty quick. So out of 13, I'll give it a 7. I will give it a 7 out of 13 for spookiness.
Spoopiness. Very cool.
What about you, Luke?
Yeah, I think this movie's incredibly interesting. I think we've talked a lot about like great horror movies being metaphors for things.
Mm-hmm.
I think like this movie is very much a metaphor for things, and we can get more into that maybe in a second. I don't want to outright be like, here's what I think, but so I think it's got a powerful premise, and it's really tackling some big ideas. Can it be a little bit I don't know, can it be a little obvious in places? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are some places where it's pretty like the message of the movie's pretty on the nose.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's very original. It's got a good atmosphere. I've never seen a movie like this before. And like I said, the final act, I was not surprised by like the expressions on Lanson's face, because the final act is just insanity.
Yeah.
Actually, honestly, like my biggest criticism of the movie is it's such a slow build where you're feeling things build for so long that when the final act hits as hard as it does feel a little, maybe a little silly in places. Yeah. It feels like it doesn't match what the movie's been so far, and it just explodes into like really like over dramatic chaos. Over dramatic, not like the actors are bad or anything like that. It's just like it goes from 0 to 60 in terms of how batshit insane it is.
Yeah.
Like really quick. So I think that's something that kind of hurts the movie for me, is in the final act is it's just bananas. But that's kind of fun too. Yeah, like definitely a lower budget, but they make the most of it. It's a really fun little romp. Overall quality, yeah. So I've kind of given my issues with it. I think for me, it's going to land at about an 8 as well for overall quality. For spookiness, yeah, again, this isn't a movie that's trying to get you to jump. This is a movie that's trying to get you to ask some really uncomfortable questions and sit in some really uncomfortable moments. And then there's that last section of the movie, which, like I said, goes full bananas and has some like nightmarish imagery like right there at the end. And so spookiness, I'm not going to go quite as high as Lanson. I'm probably going to put it at about a 6. I'll put it at about a 6.
Nice.
I think there's stuff in there that'll stay with you, some imagery that'll kind of creep around in the back of your mind. But is anything going to make you like jump in your seat, or like, are you going to have a hard time sleeping after watching this movie? Maybe not. So yeah, pretty like decent. I would give it a decent score. How are you feeling about it, Adam?
Yeah, I think I feel very similar to you in what my highs and my lows are with the movie. Mostly high, though. I was very, very surprised by this movie. I found the premise totally intriguing. When they found the doors and the windows just closed in, I was like, oh, this is going to be a good movie. Like, this is the types of movie I just love. These isolated movies where something's going on outside. I think, to me, this movie was very... when the first little bit of this movie was happening, I was like, this is Get Out, you know? I was like, this is a very similar premise to Get Out. There's a family. He's kind of distant to the family. He meets them. They're a little overtly racist in this interracial relationship. And then after the stuff starts happening, it parts ways from Get Out very quickly. But I couldn't help but compare the first little bit to it. And I think with that in mind, this movie is, like Luke said, very on the nose in some of its dialogue, has some over-the-top characters that at times are pretty unbelievable in their just overtly being racist or being just dicks. Like, I think especially the sister stuck out to me as a very just all-over-the-place character, where she was like kind of chill in like one line of dialogue, then someone else said something, and then she just like blurted out this racist phrase, and I was like, holy crap. Like, not that there aren't people like that in the world, but to me it was very very hard to like believe this is a real situation, which I don't think that the script was terrible, but I think there were things like that were a little on the nose. But after the first part ends and then the crazy stuff starts happening, I think the script and the theme and the tones really like line up to a very beautiful and lovely way. And I really liked the last 2/3 of this movie up until the end. So I'm going to actually give this a pretty high score, because I love original movies. I loved this. The way it went, the way it ended was really interesting. I think, yes, the themes were a little overt, but it really went for it. And I think it'll leave me thinking about it and wanting to talk about it and show it to people and see what they think. And you're like, what do you think the ending means? Or what do you think it's trying to say, or whatever? So I'm going to give it a 9.5. I really liked it. As far as spookiness, I was thinking near the end, I was like, I'm not going to give this a high spookiness rating, because it's really intense and really intriguing, but until the end, I was never actually scared. But then the end happened, and like Luke said, there's some imagery that's happening. To be totally specific, where a corpse is animated to life by these spindly metal fingers and it's coming through his mouth.
Turned into a friggin' meat puppet.
And especially this image that I think was so creepy, where you can hear the voice speaking through articulately, and then it zooms in on the mouth, and his lips are just barely moving. Like, that little subtlety was so chilling that I have to bump it up to a higher rating. Like, I think this is a 7 or 8. I'll give it a 7 for scariness. I think it was really scary. If that kind of thing happened the entire movie, I'd give it a lot higher rating. Because it was just at the end, I'm going to give it lower, but I don't think that means the movie was supposed to do it throughout the whole thing. Like Luke said, I think the fact that it was right at the end was kind of... I thought it was a good thing that it was so surprisingly disturbing and crazy, where it was slowly building kind of a family drama throughout the beginning part. So I don't think it's to the movie's detriment that it saved that till the end, but it would be more scary if it was throughout, if that made sense. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's weird how, as you were talking, I was like, in some ways you could compare it in some ways, like, don't go crazy. But it's weird how in some ways you could compare this to, like, Hereditary, where it's like so much of the movie is about the family and what they're doing to each other,
Right.
and the deterioration of the relationships. And then the very last, like, third of the movie is just pure insanity where everything's off the rails. Like,
Yeah.
so, like, not to say that they're super similar, but, like, if that was something you liked about Hereditary, that it was, like, so character based for the first 2/3 and then went, like, all out, went from 0 to 300 for the last, like, third, for the last act of the movie. This one kind of does the same thing, which is interesting. So yeah. I'm honestly surprised that you went as high with it. Adam's usually, like, a lot harsher on movies than Lanson and I. So Lanson and I almost always score the movie higher than Adam does. So that actually genuinely takes me by surprise. That's cool.
Yeah. I think it appealed to the things I like in movies. So maybe it was pandering toward me. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I am biased. It's a biased score.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and Adam said it at the beginning, but I'll say it again. If you've made it to this point in the podcast and you're intrigued enough that you're like, I think I want to watch this movie, do yourself a favor, pause the podcast,
Just
go into the
watch it.
movie as blind as possible, and have the experience, come back and join us. Because, yeah, like, we've already given away quite a bit of stuff already. But, like, going into this movie, I cannot stress enough, like, you have to go into this movie knowing as little as possible for you to really get the maximum out of it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So, any other points about the quality, the spookiness of the movie that we want to discuss before we start talking about survivability? I want to point out, actually, just a shout out that I was thinking during the whole movie. This movie has incredible acting.
Yeah.
And I think even the sister, who's kind of what I thought was an over-the-top character, I can tell the actress was super talented and was kind of just working with what she had to be as the script provided. I think the dad, especially, there were scenes that just blew me the fetch away. And it's kind of subtle. I don't think there's... Like, you could probably watch this movie and just think about the movie and the story and the characters, and then as an afterthought, you're like, oh yeah, the actors were so good. So, I don't know, I just think I have to give that shout out because I was amazed at the quality of the performances. It was amazing.
Yeah. I do think, like, I've already compared it to Hereditary. I won't put that on you guys. I've already compared it to Hereditary. So what I will say is, this doesn't have any big, like, moments like Toni Collette with her dinner speech. I am your mother.
There's not crazy act breaks.
There's not some, like, huge moment of acting where you get to be just in awe of the work the actor is doing. But nobody's bad. I mean, this is kind of mean, but, like, there's the brother-in-law whose name I can't remember. Scott, yeah. Scott is the name of the character, not the actor. But, like, in the script, he's very much written as kind of like a meathead, and that's how he kind of comes across in the movie. And it's like, normally, and this is a British movie, and British actors are kind of a different category than American actors. Sorry, America. But normally, like, if this movie was produced in LA, they would cast a meathead who satisfied the meathead quota, but maybe didn't have the acting ability.
Yeah.
And so even moments with him where he's just like broken down and he's actually like crying and it's all this different stuff, he's even like a great actor.
Great, yeah.
And like I said, in American movies, we would sacrifice one for the other. It's like he's either really in shape or he's a good actor. There's, you have to choose one of the two. This movie didn't have to. So yeah, the performances all around are really great. Honestly, like visually, this movie's really awesome too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're kind of cracking jokes about like, we cracking jokes. We didn't really crack jokes about the budget, but we're kind of like, during the movie, I'm like, drone shots to imply that this movie has money. But at the same time, it's like the movie is really beautifully shot. Maybe a small complaint is that it's sort of a trick for lower budget horror movies that if they have digital effects that they need to do, but they don't have the money to make the digital effect look the best that they can, they usually just put the digital effect in a lot of darkness.
Yeah.
So it's harder to see. This movie's very guilty of that whenever it has a digital effect. So like the final shot of the movie is very digital. The footage he gets on the phone at one part is obviously very digital, and they have to like really, really make it dark and hard to see. Moments like that kind of drive me crazy because I wish I could see better what was going on.
Right.
But the practical stuff is all really cool. The puppetry, there's like stop motion, slow motion. I'm pretty sure there's some stuff where they actually just run the film backwards, which is a really old school trick, but it looks actually really distinct and interesting. So again, for like a small budget movie like this to have such a distinct visual style and look as good as it does is really impressive.
Yeah.
So it's like, this isn't like an amateur hour film. This is really good acting, some solid directing, and whoever the DP was, or cinematographer, whichever it was, I'm pretty sure it was a DP. I don't know his or her name, their name, because gender neutral is a thing too. It's like that James Acaster bit. He or she is only ever said by somebody who was going to say he, but then suddenly remembered that she exists. Whoever they were that was the DP, they really knocked it out of the park. And I do get what you're saying. I'm going to say one more thing real quick. I'm sorry to be ranting.
You're fine.
I will say, you thought like the sister maybe exploded a little too easily. I remember kind of thinking the same thing my first watch through. And this watch through, it felt clear to me, like I sort of recognized a thing I've seen in real life, which is just a person who can't stand to be wrong. A person who can't stand to be, like a person who just falls apart when there's somebody smarter than them in the room. I feel like that's the sister, and I feel like that's most of where like the serious like turns in her mood came from, was just somebody outsmarting her and making her feel small or inferior. Is like really set her off. And so for me, this go around, the script and her acting were a little more unified than they were before, and I was a little more like, I a little more had a moment of like, oh, I've seen people do that, and she's doing a good job in this moment, and the script actually isn't doing a terrible job either, kind of thing. So obviously you're cool to have your opinion, but I'll just say like counterpoint. Here's kind of what I think that was going for.
Sure. Cool. Any other thoughts?
No.
Cool. Yeah, a really good film. Let's talk for a moment. So usually we talk about the killer, the antagonist, the evil presence, whatever it is that the protagonists are fighting against, and then we talk about the victims. So let's try and pick apart this pretty ambiguous presence that's there. The metal robot / alien / TV technology things that's happening. Well, I think let's first get all on the same page as far as what's happening here. So during the entire movie, I was like, it's aliens, because I've been conditioned as a person watching these movies to to see spindly arms and be like, that's an alien.
Are you saying you look for the signs?
I look for the signs. Yep. That's a sneak peek to a future episode right there.
Is it? Hold on, I gotta check the schedule.
It is.
Yep.
He's right.
He'd be right.
Always. I'm like that girl. I'm always right. All right. But I don't know. Till the end, it didn't really say explicitly. Like, what are your guys' feelings? What's going on here? What is this evil thing?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, they float a couple of theories around. There's a weird theory going around for a minute that it's some sort of experiment being done by the government. I don't buy.
Yeah.
I don't think this is some sort of technology that's like evolved naturally on its own. I don't think it's AI. I would probably say something alien. We're given like little peeks on the news, like the night before things really go down, that something weird is happening, and they don't say anything too explicit. But if I heard correctly, there might have been a slight allusion to potentially like a meteorite situation. So alien maybe seems likely. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, I really appreciate this movie, but one thing that can drive me crazy is like horror movies with an alien presence where the alien's entire purpose is to just mess with us, you know? Like I feel like they should have something better to do than just like, oh, let's see what happens. But I do think this one has sort of an interesting thing going on because, I mean, it doesn't really pan out for the characters at the very end because it's too late. But I do think that Nick and Angie, the sort of our protagonist, I do think they have a point towards the end, which is they say like it feeds off of us. It feeds off of our obedience. And if we, the more disobedient we are, the less power it has. I do think there's something to that because this presence is very adaptable, but its power level does seem to shift depending on the decisions that the family makes.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe potential weakness here, but I do think they might have been onto something when they say, like, it needs our obedience to grow stronger. So that is one category where I feel like this movie sets itself aside from the pack. This isn't just a standard, the aliens are messing with us movie. There seems to be a point that this, whatever you want to call this creature grows stronger with like the more praise, the more worship it's given. Like, which is, of course, at the end it explodes into like this fit of worship me. So it's like it clearly needs our attention. It needs our obedience at least a little. But like I said, by the end it doesn't seem to matter because it's too far gone. Yeah. But I do think there's something there. Otherwise, why would it care about being worshipped?
Right. That's a good point.
And I think to add to that point, to the very end when it just eats the sister just to the bone or whatever. I don't know if it eats her, just destroys her to the bone, and then it leaves the baby, and then the TV's right there, and the TV says "Worship me," showing the baby. In my mind, that was kind of like it wants to keep some sort of slaves alive that worship it. But again, the motivation, like you said, is kind of all over. Well, not all over the place. It's just kind of hidden. Where is it like it needs people alive for it to survive, or is it kind of like just a god complex where it's like, no, we need a race of people that worship us because we have an ego, or like,
no,
I don't really know. There's a lot of things ambiguous about it, especially like, is it like this hive mind thing, or is each little spindly thing like its own individual? Like, there's a lot of things that aren't explicitly said, which I think make it a cool villain, but hard to break down.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but I think because there are moments where there's the floating corpse dad talking to them, and then he goes in there.
What a sentence.
And he just makes a super crazy judgment call. He's like, they're not going to kill me. And he goes in there and he's like, they're not going to kill me because they need us. And it kind of backs off. Like, for a moment, it looks like it's working. and then it eventually kills him.
Yeah.
So like you said, I think there's something to it, but it's like it's hard to say exactly what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Never mind.
Cool.
There was something. It's gone.
Fair enough.
Nope.
Wait. Shh, shh, shh. You watching right now. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Nope. This is your fault. You did this to me.
You make
Now
too
I-
much noise.
Now I can't think.
Tabitha, I'm talking
I
to
hate
you.
audiences. Tabitha.
Josiah.
Gosh,
Josiah.
dang it, gosh.
Jeremiah.
Why do you keep doing this to us?
Why does this have to keep happening? But yeah, definitely talking about. I definitely think that it's an alien presence. But again, it is ambiguous, and I do think it is interesting that so much of the interaction with the alien is just kind of lying in wait and being like, all right, here's some instructions. Let's see what they do. But we need them to obey. It's kind of necessary, but kind of not. So it definitely is ambiguous in that sense as well. But yeah, I don't know. It looked like at the end that, like, when you look outside of their house, it wasn't just their house. Like, it was
Yeah.
like all over the place.
It was like the whole town.
Yeah,
Each
exactly.
window had the TV in it. I thought that was a cool shot.
Yeah.
You could see the glare of the
Yeah.
TV.
So I think that's
Some
interesting.
houses just straight on fire, apparently.
Yeah, right. I was thinking of that.
I know.
What happened there?
So yeah, that also adds an interesting sort of thing where it's like, geez, like what's happening in those other houses? How does it all go down? Like, yeah. So I think that's it. I enjoy the fact that it's not just offered to you on a silver platter, but at the same time, it's like, what do you want? What are you here for?
Yeah. It's not clear cut. It's not like when we did A Quiet Place and it's like, like here's their strengths and also here are some weaknesses.
Right.
There isn't anything spelled out. It's because the family doesn't really have time to figure out what's going on.
No.
Like they're just falling so quickly to infighting that they don't really have the opportunity to investigate anything. And you can almost maybe intuit from the ending that like they do need slaves, I guess. They need some of us to worship them, but they're also not afraid to completely like cut ties if they aren't going to find obedience in us.
Yeah.
If they just lose faith in us, they'll just kill us and then go on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens in the movie is like they narrow it down to the last few people, and when the last two people refuse to obey, it kills them. But then also like that shot where it's panning away, it's like you said, some houses there's the glow of the television in the window, other houses are on fire.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just like symbolically saying you worship or you burn.
Yeah.
I think just to kind of tie this into survivability, from what we've seen in this movie, and especially when it pulls out and we see how big this thing is, it's pretty hard to survive these things. It's pretty tough to like. There could have been more these characters could have done. I think there were moments like when he found through the tube of the toilet that it led outside, that these beings aren't like these perfect aliens that think of every single minute detail. There are T's uncrossed and I's undotted. There's things that make them in almost a perfect way imperfect, where they could miss some things, but those are like small weaknesses to just something that's so overpoweringly more powerful than the characters. So I think there are weaknesses, but either they're not really explored in these characters, or they're so small that again they just might forget this like inch hole in the wall, and then
There's the mail slot in the door that cuts off friggin' Scott's fingers.
Yeah, I know, right?
So it's like, I mean, even in small moments like that, you're like, oh yeah, it's hard to mess with these guys.
yeah.
I don't know. One thing I will point out, if I'm putting myself in Nick's place, for instance, and I am bringing home I guess they state that his girlfriend was born and raised in the UK, but is of Indian descent, of Asian descent in some way. That is, like I said, his family is very racist towards her. One thing I will point out is she tells him straight up, I want to leave right now.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, I don't want a huge thing with my family. Let's just wake up early in the morning before anybody else does and leave then.
Yeah.
If I'm in Nick's place, he hasn't spoken to his family in 3 years, they said.
Yeah.
He hasn't spoken to his family in 3 years. The night went truly horribly. His girlfriend tells him to his face, I want to leave right now. I would probably just risk a confrontation with my family and leave right then.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, once you're out that door, you don't have to talk to him again for as long as you want. And it's implied he lives, like, a fair distance away, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, at the very least, he might buy himself some time. This first neighborhood falls, but they start to figure out the weakness of this entity and the world fights back or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing that I'm going to point out is just like the passive aggressive way he's like, well, let's just leave so my family doesn't notice. I probably would just be like, yeah, we can go.
Yep.
You got it, babe. We're out of here.
We leave it.
It's a bunch of dumb hicks.
And I think this is a good tie into talking about the characters because I think there were some questionable decisions.
Yep.
I think the characters weren't impervious to influence and stupid decisions.
Like I said, for me, it really like all comes into focus when there's that scene where he's yelling, we did this to ourselves.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
I'm like, yeah, everything that happened so far is 100% on them.
Yeah.
Just being influenced by this
Yeah.
outside presence. But so far, it is 100% their fault.
Because literally all the alien had done pretty much to that point is put him in a box and then put things on a television. So like you said, it's just them. I think some decisions that stuck out to me and I think this was a place where you're like, that was a plot device to keep the plot going, so I see why it was necessary. But if I was the character, so they were passing around those syringes, and the dad was like, shoot everybody up, we gotta be obedient. And there was that moment where Nick was talking to Angie, was her name, right?
Mm-hmm. The girlfriend?
He was like, it's the only way, or something like that. It's like, come on, we have to do it. And to me, that was like so weird, where I'm like, here's what you do. You're like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and then go over to the potted plant and just like into the potted plant and be like, like.
Yeah, I saw that in a James Bond movie once.
Nice.
Shoot, I just kicked that camera. Sorry, camera. That was a little
Bam.
jarring.
Hey, audience at home, shake it up, baby.
It wasn't an earthquake.
Don't mess with Adam.
But I think there were some
leave
decisions
us alone.
like that the characters made where I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do that, and I don't know if it was the only way. I think there's ways of complying in a way that the family is like, good, but you're like actually not complying in that specific way. But
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I do think, like I said, the first time I watched this movie was in the safety of 2019.
right.
Versus watching it now during a pandemic, it becomes a lot more complicated because, in essence, this is a movie about a quarantine
Yeah,
and how to handle it. And so it's weird to be like, parts of it, I'm like, well, that's a bit outlandish. And then we see it in real life in a real pandemic. And you're like, oh, wow. So I do like want to make a couple of points really quick, which is, so obviously they send the syringes down. They say this is a vaccination, inject yourself. The reasonable thing there is don't inject yourself with that. You have no idea what's in it.
Yeah.
And there are going to be a lot of people out there that are like, it's the same thing with the COVID vaccine. No. It is so not the same thing, you guys. Don't be dumb. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Having a friggin' trash bag fall down your chimney full of already used syringes versus going to an actual medical facility and getting a tested and tried out vaccine that was worked on very hard by some of like the smartest doctors and scientists in America and the world. not the same thing. So if you try to make a comparison between those two things, you're doing it very much against my wishes and blessing. Screw you. There's something for you. Are we allowed to do that? Are we allowed to do that on YouTube? We're going to find out.
I think what's cool about this, what you made me
sorry.
think of a little bit, how dare you? I'm speaking. How dare you?
Worship him. Worship him.
Worship me.
Quiet. It all makes sense now.
A point I want to make, and that's a little off topic, but Luke made me think of it. There's a lot of different ways to look at this and a lot of different metaphors. Like, I think one is kind of the political metaphor where it's like, are you going to do everything the government says? Which is not really where my mind went. You could watch this and kind of get that out of it, which is totally fair because the TVs are where the thing's coming from. So that's kind of an obvious. The media is selling stuff to us that's not always good. But to me, the biggest metaphor that resounded most closely with me was the religious aspect, where he was like, this is Jesus, this is the second coming, pretty much. And that hit me so hard when that was happening, because I was like, this is how this is being manipulated is so scary. Like, that is a terrifying thing. And I think I'm trying to think of how to put this in a sensitive way, but I think as people, we are very susceptible. If something had this power to simulate something like that, a lot of people would do crazy batshit things because they think it is a god,
Right?
Their
A
god.
higher power of some kind.
And so when we're talking about the characters and where the dad's at, he does some crazy ass things.
Yeah.
But you're
yeah,
watching
yeah.
it and you kind of get it to a certain extent. You get his character. Not that you would do it, but you're like, you know what? If a man was that committed to his dogma and he actually believed this was going on, then, you know?
I do feel one place where this movie is strong too is I do think you have a moment where you start to clearly understand why each character is the way that they is the way they is.
Is what it is.
It is what it is, baby doll. I guess, like, especially there's like, I guess you could call it a funeral scene for the grandpa. It's not much of a funeral, and it's basically just the dad talking about like this really like fucked up story of he peed the bed because he was too scared of waking his dad up.
Right.
And like you just start to get this sense of like this man is so emasculated. He is so in need of being in control that like it makes sense that when he's given guidance, when he's given a chance to take the lead, he does it. You know, it's kind of like when you're out hiking and there's a couple different things that could be the hiking trail and you're not sure which is the official trail and which is like a fake trail that somebody made,
Right.
you know, just by default. Sometimes it is easy for just whoever looks the most confident strutting down a path to be like, yeah, follow them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always mean it's the smartest thing. So I do get where he's coming from, where you want to be a leader, you want to be decisive, and you want to trust in like the voice of authority that exists there, except he should have an awareness of where that authority comes from, and he doesn't. That's my biggest thing, is like, especially if we're going to compare it directly to COVID, if we get some sort of mandate from the CDC, we know where their authority comes from. It comes from being experts in the medical field,
Science.
from being scientists, from being well versed, from being educated in that environment.
Yeah.
So when you get a directive from the CDC, it's easy to trust their authority and know where they're coming from. When the TV says, hey, throw away your food, it's contaminated, we have no idea where that's coming from.
Right.
And you got to stop for a second and think, well, what authority is this? How do we know for sure what's happening?
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest message in this movie for me, is that you just have to do your research and you have to feel confident in the decision you're making. You can't do things blind. Where people are going to take this movie too far, and I've said this for a long time, but I've always been under the mentality of I want to question everything and then find what I want to accept. There are a lot of people in this world who will just question everything and never accept anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where this movie gets dangerous, is it might reinforce that ideal in some people. There are ideas and concepts very much worth accepting.
Yeah, for sure.
And so like the dad is too blind, and arguably maybe Nick is too, maybe he's too like willfully going against it.
Yeah.
He ends up being like completely correct, but he isn't necessarily correct, because I mean, even from moment one, he's like, we don't know anything. It's just the TV. And it's like, well, I mean, yeah, the government could send something to your TV.
It's
That's
not a
unreasonable
ridiculous thing to think that this is the government, because I think it's a
so,
valid
like,
point.
So maybe he's a little bit too far in the questioning direction at times, but then it gets to the point where, they huck a garbage bag full of hypodermic needles down the chimney, and you're like, ooh, we need to really stop and think about this one, because this is not cool.
Yeah.
So I guess what this conversation kind of shows me is a lot of the characters do crazy things, and a lot of those crazy things are justified in their paradigm.
Their point of views make sense.
In their point of views, it all kind of makes sense. I think there's a couple decisions, like I mentioned with the needles, where where I might be different and I might put up a bigger fight, or at least do things to avoid, like I said, just get rid of the needle in a discreet way, like where I'm still in control, but I'm having a good relationship with my family. But I don't think there's many opportunities to do that. I think everything is pretty cut and dry, like this is what you need to do. And so you can't hide that forever. So I think some of the decisions near the beginning could be avoided, but near the end, I think, as far as Nick is concerned, and Angie, they both make good decisions and good finds as far as figuring out what's going on. Nick with the phone through the wall, and Angie like peeling that metal thing to notice that there's a camera or whatever, and then opening the TV. So there's a lot of good decisions and smart decisions that they make that helps them start to realize what's going on, at least getting a sense like, okay, this isn't the government. Like, even though it's still ambiguous, they're like, okay, no, there's something scary and creepy going on right now. So
I do think there comes a point of no return with the dad, where if I'm in Nick's shoes, how to put this politely, the fact that the dad somehow has like a second chance with Nick after he tortures him, that I don't buy. If I'm in Nick's shoes, I'm like, nope, everybody stay away from me. Like, all bridges are burned.
I don't trust anybody.
I would literally have a weapon on me at all times, and if somebody looked a little too weird at me, I would just kill him.
Yeah.
Even if it was my dad. Like, sorry, but at that point, he hasn't had a relationship with his dad for 3 years. Things are spiraling out of control. His dad tries to gouge his eye out with a screwdriver. No, it ain't happening.
And what's his face, Meathead, just kind of stands there too.
Yeah, Scott just watches.
He's kind of flip-flopping on whose side he's on anyway, so there's redeemable qualities. But like you said,
that was so well written though with Scott. Like his motif of a shepherd has to guide the flock to really drive home that he's just not a shepherd. He is a sheep.
He's the follower.
It was so that was one area of the script that was so well written that I was like, wow, they killed that.
Yeah, his character was cool, but you could, like your point, where if I was Nick, after that, I'm not trusting him. I'm not trusting my dad. I ain't trusting anybody. I'm trusting Angie, and that's it. So. I think, like you said, the point of no return, I'm like, okay, it's me against the world, Pretty much.
For sure. And I mean, I don't know. Like, some stuff happens, and I kind of get why he loosens up a little, because when the mom really goes after the dad, that seems to really, like, make the dad back down for a bit. And so, like, maybe I could see him being like, oh, maybe the worst of it is over. But I don't know. Like, from the beginning of the movie, it's clear he trusts his girlfriend and he trusts his mom, and he doesn't trust anyone else in the family. I would have held on to that a little tighter as things started to go really weird. And I mean, it speaks volumes that when stuff goes sideways, the dad, like, gets Scott on his side. Like, he doesn't care about what Nick thinks. He wants Scott to be on his side.
Scott is the man that is in the house that he can not trust, but he can
rely on, maybe.
know that he'll be followed by that person.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a lot of interesting dynamics, and a lot of the perspectives do make sense to me. But me personally, in this movie, assuming I'm put in place of Nick, I am going to make some drastically different choices in terms of what I allow to happen, and like how much trust I'm going to be giving to people after certain points, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do agree that there's no way I would inject myself with that.
Oh,
needle.
jeez.
It wouldn't happen.
Nope.
Do you have some thoughts about the characters, Lance, and any decisions they make?
Yeah, I think just really when it boils down to it, it's a lot about who's right rather than like, let's work together on this. So I feel like even if you do make great decisions, there's always going to be somebody that's trying to undermine you or try to get one up on you for their own ego. So I think that's worth mentioning. And I think that, and it's hard to escape that because you're locked in a house with these people. It's like, maybe you can lock the door, but I don't know. So, yeah, as far as like a thing that I guess kind of makes sense, but I'm kind of like, well, that's a little dumb, is like when they're like, let's get Angie quarantined, and then the boyfriend literally kisses her, and it's like,
and they're all fine
he's
with
fine.
it.
Fine. He's fine. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, nothing. That's the biggest indication in the movie of how racist these people really are. They're like, our son isn't sick, he's white.
He's white. He's got the right skin.
So, yeah, I also was thinking about that.
Yep.
Also, again, if I'm in Nick's place, like, the second act of this movie becomes a lot less melodramatic because as soon as they're like, we're going to quarantine Angie, it's like, all right, then I'm going with her.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been with her. We were sleeping in the same bed earlier when you told us to scrub ourselves with bleach. We were nice and naked for that. We've been around each other a lot. So you know what? I'm just going to have to be quarantined too.
I'll take the dead grandpa room if you don't mind.
I'll jump in that dead grandpa room. Who cares?
Grandpa.
We'll share the sheets.
Oh, no.
Please, no.
Oh, God.
Desperate times, brothers. Desperate times.
Use the curtains at that point. It's already blacked out, man. Nobody's looking through.
If you made it to this point in the podcast without stopping to go watch the movie, but you still think you're going to watch the movie, just let me tell you right away, you were going to get a healthy dose of old man nudity.
Oh, yeah. Dude.
Oh, yeah, that was out of nowhere. I was like, oh, gosh.
Wow.
I forgot it was in the movie, and then it happened, and all three of us were like, oh.
It was kind of funny.
So,
it made me chuckle.
It is like
It's
actually,
a funny shot.
it is really funny, and especially the scene where it's like, "Are you okay? I can scrub my balls myself." Like, it is a really funny beat in the movie. It's kind of a nice like break from like the tension. But yeah, if you've made it this far and basically everything's already been spoiled already, let me just give you fair warning. There is a scene where you will see an old man furiously scrubbing his butt.
Yep.
Hilarious.
So there you go.
Any other thoughts about decisions made by characters that we could maybe do better on?
Oh boy,
it's kind of a tough one because I think
Yeah.
people do crazy things, but again, it's in line with their own paradigms that it's hard to criticize.
Yeah. I do agree with that a lot.
I think even what's the meathead's name? What's his name? Scott. Even him reaching through the metal vagina and then getting his fingers cut off. That wasn't a stupid decision. I feel like I would even do that.
Like you'd probably try to peek. You just kind of like, hello? Hello?
Hey, my ball and fingers.
So I think even that, which was a crazy, like, oh my gosh, he lost his fingers, almost like a funny moment.
Yeah.
It still was.
That got you guys a bit, which was interesting.
Yeah.
I think that was still not like the worst decision. Like I might have that curiosity, be like, this is the only portal to the outside world. I'm getting at least a glimpse of what's out there.
Right.
Yeah. So. I don't know. They don't really have the chance to explore it, but if you stay level-headed long enough to say like something isn't quite working here, maybe you might have the chance to experiment with these like cable walls or something, where maybe I mean, for instance, towards the end, he tries to blow it up, and that does seem to hurt it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they could use fire to try and get some of the cables to retract and get out. Maybe, like, they could figure something out. I'm not saying, like, acid is just something you can find at home, but, like...
Right.
Like Angie is a medical student. She has like certain knowledge of things. Maybe she could come up with something that you could like put on the cables and try to get them to retract. So I think they could have worked together a little bit and tried to figure some stuff out. But at the same time, we do have to note that, and they say as much in the movie, whatever this entity is, it's adapting to their decisions.
Yeah.
And it's figuring out how to manipulate them, right? For instance, like when Nick becomes too much of a problem, it just subtly is like, hey, you have a sleeper agent. Like it's adapting to, it recognizes Nick as a threat because it happens the moment he gets the phone outside the perimeter. As it goes, there's a perimeter breach, sleeper agent, whatever. So clearly it's adapting in real time, and it recognizes who the greatest threat to its survival is, and it tries to find a way to get its servants to target that person. So it's sort of interesting because you don't really... I mean, maybe if you work together, you might have some time to try and suss out some weaknesses. But again, like, it's adapting to you in real time, which is incredibly difficult. You know, you can't just be... Like, you're playing chess, but your opponent set the board for you.
Yeah.
And that makes it incredibly difficult. So that's something I'm going to point out right now as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Tough to get around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with all of this as the background, I think now is a good time to make some decisions. So we're going to figure things out in terms of final boy status and final girl status. Final boy status, if this is your first time, is the cliche with slasher movies. Final girl is the final girl, the one whom by the skin of her teeth survives, slips away from the knife-toting psychopath. And then final boy status, we have defined as the last person to survive, usually the last boy who sacrifices himself or just barely doesn't make it to the end. So we decided whether we can make final boy status, and if we can make final girl status. So how do we feel about final boy status? Do we think we could reach those levels?
You want to start, Lanson?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll just say I'm getting that final boy status because I feel like I don't know, like thinking back to when it came to like when your parents would tell you to do something, I would act and be very quiet, like I did do that thing, but ultimately I was just doing what I wanted to do.
Hold on. Lanson's mom, I know you're watching. Please just turn this off for a second.
Just pause it, Mom.
He's got to say something.
We
20
don't.
seconds
Okay,
ahead.
he's your perfect baby boy, and if you skip 20 seconds ahead, he'll still be your perfect baby boy.
Don't ruin your innocence.
Anyway, so about Grenada, let me get real here, guys.
I picked up the flamethrower.
It just went off. DTYL to my innocence. No, so like I feel like in that regard, I would kind of be like, yeah, you're right, Dad. Yeah, you're so correct. Yep, let's do this, and then I would just do my thing.
Yeah,
it's like
then you're not suspicious. You have a target on your back.
I also would love like the TV to just be like, you do the thing where it's like with the potted plant, you squirt it to the side, and it's like, actually, not everybody got vaccinated. Don't ask me how I know that, but not everybody did it. It's like, okay.
Frickin' puppet dad comes in through the window and is like, hold on a second.
Yeah. Sean.
Worship me. Anyway.
So yeah, that would be my take on that.
Cool. What about you, Luke?
Okay. Yeah, I'll give myself final boy status because I feel like to get to that place, you just have to, like Lanson said, it's kind of twofold. One, don't do anything outrageously stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Two, keep your head down to keep order in the group, but you don't have to be obedient either.
Yeah.
I feel like, again, if my parents are watching this, fast forward, just skip forward a little bit. But if there was one thing I learned as a teenager, it's that I could get away with a lot if my parents were like, this is what I expect from you. I provided those things and then just didn't tell them about the crazy stuff I was getting up to in my own time. Which basically meant watching rated R movies in my basement at 2 a.m.
Yo.
That was about as, like, disobedient as I got as a teenager. Unfortunately. I could have been so much cooler. So, yeah, I feel like you got to kind of ride that line of keeping the peace, but also not doing anything totally stupid. And I feel like I feel like that's just navigating family dynamics anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree, like, final boy status, I feel like I could reach that level.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think I can really add much to it. I think, yeah. I don't know what else to say. Just put it in the potted plant, have a big smile, say, Dad, you're always right. You're just the greatest. You're the hero. You're the leader.
The shepherd.
Dad, you're killing it. Why don't you go check that little mail slot?
Go stick your
your
head
nose. Stick your nose right in there.
So that's pretty simple. I think
Shouldn't have said stick your nose in there with the imagery we've already attached to it.
and
bad
based
choice.
on the advances of the mom, he's not into that today. Whatever.
I don't want to be weird or anything, but that mom can get it. I don't know why.
Welcome back, Luke's parents.
Bow, take it down.
I don't want to be weird, and I don't entirely know why it was like checking some boxes with me, but I was
Let's get weird.
But every time the dad was like, back off, woman, we got stuff to do. I was like, oh, you have a little time. Come on.
Wait, what are you gonna do?
She seems cool. I don't know.
The box didn't say have no sex.
Hey, man, it might be the end of the world, so get your kisses in.
Oh, get those smoochies. I need them kisses.
Smuchísimo.
So, really exposing myself at this point. But there was something about that mom that I was kind of feeling that vibe.
Luke's just like, what's going on at that house over there? Hey, guys.
Well, what? Let me peek through the. Hey, alien guy. Can I just go over there?
Hey, Mrs. Milgram.
I know you got like a lot going on, but
I think there's something to what's happening over here in the fact that she was one of the only decent human beings in this entire movie.
Maybe that's part of it.
The comparison is a little.
Maybe that's part of it. The one person in the movie attempting to be an actually good person, and I'm like, wow.
And with the juxtaposition of those scenes where we've got old man Filch butt, and then immediately cutting to her in the robe, you're like, I could see where it's coming from. It could be more than that, but
I'm being manipulated by the television.
Worship me. Okay.
Okay.
Here is the definitive question, the operative question, the big boy here.
The objective.
Could you make final girl status? Could you survive the alien thing?
It seemed like there was going to be more, and then you were just done. All right. Let me tell you what. Let me tell you what.
Tell me what.
Let me tell you what.
Tell me what.
Here's what I'm thinking.
About the mom?
If I'm in this movie, and I'm assuming that I am not the character of Nick, I'm not related to any of these people.
Mm-hmm.
The night before Christmas, when everything's popping off and it's super awkward, and clearly the mom's in a bad situation,
Yeah.
I show up like a frickin' firefighter, you know?
Oh.
And I'm like, I think you need somebody to take you away from all this. She and I ride off into the sunset. And the events of this movie never even happened to us. I take her to a nice place. I treat her well. And just you know, she's in a very bad relationship with her husband there. He's obviously not a good person. He's frankly kind of abusive towards her.
Oh, yeah.
I just take her away from all that.
Yep.
Me and her, like, it does, like, we don't even need to get into anything right away. She needs time to recover, and I get that. I want to be there for her for a bit. So we're off in like Jakarta, just taking a second for us to try and discover what this new thing is, And we're not even there when all this goes down. We have a chance for people to step in and say, here's the weakness of this thing. Here's how we defeat it. Maybe it never even gets to Jakarta. She and I actually have a pretty happy life together, you know? We raised some beautiful kids of our own. Adopted, but we raised some beautiful kids of our own. And it's actually a beautiful story. And I survive. I am the final girl, and I am the luckiest final girl.
What a sweetie. That's all I gotta say about that. That's awesome.
That is a really heartwarming, wholesome story. Thanks, Luke.
Take that woman and whisk her away. Show her a good life, man. Show her she's appreciated. I like that.
What about you, Lanson?
All right, and here we go. Yes, I'm gonna make it final girl status. And let me tell you how, ladies and gentlemen, and all
Tell
you
me
party
how.
people. So I like how that's like almost, come on, tell us.
You can do it. Come on.
You could
be
tell
bad.
us.
Be
You
bad.
could tell us.
gosh, this is so crazy, guys. I've never done this before, but okay. So here's my take. Here's what I'm gonna do. I am going to be the wolf in sheep's clothing, and I'm gonna let the aliens think that they are dominating me, but I am actually dominating them. Let me explain.
Please do.
So, I comply, I follow all the rules, you know. Or at least I keep up the appearance that I'm following the rules. And then I figure out, doing my own snooping, discreetly, just like, oh man, I wonder what that's all. Okay, that's a camera, which I knew. That's a camera right there. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm in quarantine, don't got anything better to do. Good thing, I have the movie The Room memorized, so I'm just gonna act that out. Just try that out for fun. Do all the characters, do all the voices, all that good stuff. And so I end up acting out the entire movie The Room, and these aliens are like, this is a higher life form that we're dealing with here. Like, this man created this from his brain?
We thought they would worship us. We should worship them.
And at the very end, when they think, after Tommy takes his own life, and spoiler alert, if you haven't seen The Room, you should definitely see it.
Also, the character's name is Johnny, but I love that you projected that onto the actor Tommy.
Well, yeah, his name's Tommy. He's Tommy. It's Tommy, bro.
He's playing
Tommy Wiseau.
Tommy Wiseau. So, anyway, when Tommy dies, because his name is Tommy in the movie, I know, because I acted it out.
You have it all memorized.
I have it memorized.
He has it memorized.
Photographically, phonetically, Phoenicianly.
Hooked
Anyway.
on phonics.
Hooked down phonics. After that, the aliens are like, oh no, we drove him too far. But then I rise, so I'm resurrected. I'm coming back up from the dead, and I'm like, I have come back, and you guys need to worship me. And then, the only smart, logical thing to do is to worship me at that point. And then, I end up ruling the world because, I know The Room by memory. So that is how I survive.
And he will be a benevolent ruler.
No.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Not in the least.
He's like full Caligula. Oh, no.
Machiavellian, I wouldn't say that you're safe, just under new management.
Well, good.
So,
And
yet again. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You were saying something. Please finish. I was
No.
going to turn the question to Adam.
Oh, no, you're
but
good.
You had something
Yeah.
to
What's the thing I was going to say? Oh, yeah. I had it. I really had it.
Oh, man. Josiah, are you happy now?
Shut up, Josiah.
Josiah?
Are you happy? Are you happy that you're doing this to
Josiah,
us?
don't listen to these guys. I'm your only friend. Worship me. So, yeah, that's how I would do it. And then I'd just go door to door. I would teach my followers
Oh,
how to
become
act
a
that out.
missionary.
Yeah, in a way.
Missionary of
Just
your...
spread out the room, and then Tommy was so I'd have to kill him because
There can only be one.
there can only be one. So I would eat
Which
his.
would they settle for? The imitation or the original?
Well, I would
So
eat
you
his
have to
heart,
do-
so
Oh,
therefore
you become
his
the-
protein would become my protein, and I would
course.
be superior to him. So,
That's obvious.
Classic.
so yeah, not by being a good person would I survive, but I would survive.
It's like always the end statement of your survival scenarios.
Sometimes, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Guys got to eat.
I
How about you, Adam? Yeah.
would not survive. I would die. I would. I mean, you brought up some compelling points. I hear you, but there's no surviving this movie if you're an actual person and not a Tommy Wiseau.
What are you saying?
fanatic.
You're saying we're not real? We're we're figments of Adam's imagination.
I see no way out. For me, I don't have the room memorized, and I don't have the chops to woo, over 50-year-old woman. I just don't have that in me. You have it in you.
You know,
That's a skill you have.
It takes something special to win over an older woman.
It does.
I will admit
so
that.
I don't have you guys' skills. I'm not surviving this thing. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to play the game that I'm like, wow, you just can't win this thing. So I lock myself in a room with all the food they threw away outside, so they just put it in a room, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
You're eating a full turkey in the corner.
It's a good thing they put this garbage bag in the corner. So I go to that corner. I survive as long as I can. I don't even look at the TV. I don't know what's going on. They'll be like, he's not
man.
playing the game.
You
They'll probably kill me.
You get hit by the poison gas.
I'll get hit by the poison gas and explode.
Yeah.
A black.
That was the first moment I looked over at Lanson and he was going. And then
a
that
crazy
face
death.
and then that face was just there for the rest of the movie.
So I'm not surviving.
Well, there it is, folks.
There it be.
That's the
Hershey blows.
show. Thanks for listening. Again, check out the movies. Check out the next movie, which is going to be The Witch or The Witch.
La Bruja.
Yes.
Roger Eggers, the director.
Something Eggers.
You'll find out next time. Tune in next
Shoot.
time.
I was
You'll
going to
find out.
say it in a smart way, and then I didn't remember it's an R name, and then
I think
Eggers.
it's Robert.
Robert Eggers.
I can't believe I forgot that. But yeah, the Witch starring Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yes.
Real interesting one.
That's the
So,
next one.
Yeah, this is another one. We got like a couple in a row here where our recommendation right out of the gate was watch this movie before you hear the podcast.
Doesn't always happen.
But yeah, for The Witch, I would say the same thing. If you have the opportunity, definitely watch this before checking out the
Yeah.
podcast.
Definitely do.
How many-
Yeah.
We've both seen it. Have you seen it?
The Witch?
Oh, okay, so all of us have seen it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Have you seen it?
Wait. No, you know what? I just saw The Lighthouse backwards. That's what I saw.
Have you seen it?
Uh-uh.
I haven't seen it either.
None
So
of us have seen it.
we definitely haven't seen it. So
Eh.
you should definitely watch the episode and watch the movie too.
Do you guys have any plugs?
This podcast, as always, we have
Just plug it in.
a lot of fun making it. Final Boy Status. Find it where you find your podcasts. Also, YouTube.
You can
YouTube
see our
with the U.
faces if you're not already.
Yep. See.
That was so aggressive.
I like getting close to the microphone, but it's probably not a good production thing to do.
See my face.
I mean, the levels stay mostly the same
Absorb my
anyway.
content. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
You got anything, Luke?
I mean, if I have something specifically going on, I can't say for sure. So for now, I'm always doing something. So I'll make YouTube videos. I'll make other stuff. So if you want to be up to date with what I'm currently doing, just follow me on Twitter and I'll tweet about it and you can check it out. So my account is at Luke Haueter. That's LukeHaueter. I'll post whatever I'm working on there, and I'll post whatever funny stuff I happen to think about.
I'm in a D&D podcast. It's called The Worlds Beyond, or the World Beyond, and it's pretty fun. I'm in it's a good time. If you like if you like D&D and you like podcasts and you like cowboys just doing incredibly violent things to creatures, check it out.
Uncle Cowboy.
I remember at some point I asked you what's your favorite part of doing that show, and you said fighting.
Heck yeah.
I like the violence.
He really gets into the violence.
So yeah, that's the show. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys have a stellar rest of your week. We'll catch you next week.
See ya.
Adios.
Amigos.
This has been an Underqualified Idiocracy media production, produced by Lanson Lappin, Adam Bone, and Luke Haueter. Theme music for the episode was written by Rachel Robison. You can hear more of Rachel's music at rachelrobinsonmusic.com. You can also find her on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching at Robel Racheson. Artwork for the YouTube version of this podcast was created by Trinity Rodriguez. You can follow her on Twitter by searching at InstrinBaby to see more of her work. This podcast was recorded in Underqualified Studios and edited by Luke Haueter, with special thanks to Mike Fuchs for providing audio assistance. The illustrious voice acting providing the intro and outro of this episode is Shane Alvey of the Paradox Files voice acting. You can explore more of his work on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching at The Paradox Files.